Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to yet again another Workflow Wednesday with none other than Fusion Phil over here at JitCAD Cam. I can see a lot of you guys out there in chat. As you guys see in my messages already, we've had nothing but problems inside of our timers, so to count this down, but it wouldn't be a normal week unless we had problems, of course. So with that, as the title says, we're going to jump in and we're going to look at things that can cause crashes inside of Autodesk Fusion, as well as some remedies to fix or how to troubleshoot your issues. So the first couple of things I'm going to do is I'm actually moving my lovely little checklist down out of the way so I don't forget anything. And for anybody out there wondering what I'm looking at, I now have my fancy monitor over my other monitor. So when I talk to you guys, I can actually see myself a little bit better versus looking way over to the left or way over to the right at the monitor. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, of course, so we don't forget about that. And what I'm actually not going to do is we're not going to start with a part here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop open a good old-fashioned text page. And let's get this moved out of the way here real quick, because the first thing I want to show you guys, again, this makes a pretty big difference, is the minimum requirements for Autodesk Fusion. Now, these have changed over the years. I'm trying to type this in. I probably should have pulled this up ahead of time, but I think this is where I think a lot of people get things wrong at the end of the day, right? So as you can see, I would not trust AI in this case. AI is a very powerful tool, but as you can see, what it is recommending is actually completely wrong specs when it comes to Autodesk Fusion. What I really do recommend for anybody out there wondering is you want to go ahead and check the Autodesk website, right? Now, this page here, if we can get zoomed in a little bit, is as you're starting to notice, we are making the transition from Windows 10 to Windows 11. So anybody out there buying or building a PC, you should probably be doing so on Windows 11. Now, keep in mind the minimum requirements, a 2-core, 4-thread processor. This is not going to get you very far. I'll be honest here. We actually recommend going to at least an 8-core system to start with. Now, keep in mind, depending on your budget, there's places to spend money and there's places to save money. I would highly recommend spending your money on your CPU processor over a graphics card. We see this mistake a lot, right? Next couple of things, 8 gigs of memory. Now, 8 gigs of RAM is not going to be ideal either. Again, we like to double that up. Most computers nowadays, if you're somebody that lives near a Walmart, we usually recommend a gaming laptop to get you started. Price range anywhere from $800 to $1,200. Now, I can understand that doesn't fit into a lot of budgets. Again, GPU, you don't have to spend a ton of money here. Now, this is, in my opinion, one of the things that people overshoot and don't think about is, realistically speaking, anything you're going to run a monitor-wise 1080p, I would look getting into like a GTX card. Now, you can also go RTX as well. Crazy Snowboarder, great to see you in chat. Love to see you here live. But again, anything that you're going to pick up nowadays, again, I can't stress this enough. This is where I tend to point people. Now, recommended settings work way better. Trust me. The computer I do all my live streaming on checks all of these boxes. Now, I am streaming as well. I'm also performing things inside of Fusion, and it works quite well, right? So again, we highly recommend 32 gigs of RAM. As you can see, a minimum of 8 performance cores. Now, this is still, when we talk about generations of CPUs and things like that, this is where a lot of problems I see on the forums come from is, hey, I spent $4,000 on this computer 2-3 years ago, and now it doesn't seem to work well. Well, in the last, 3 years, a lot of things have changed. So we can go ahead and check that off, right? So again, based on minimum recommendations, you can extend the life of a lot of computer by throwing a little bit extra RAM at it. Now, keep in mind, I am going to let you guys in on a secret. I'm upgrading RAM in my computer to 64 gigs, and that's because I like to run a million tabs of Chrome like most of you guys. But I will say we will probably be giving away a couple of used sticks of RAM, 32 gigs total, based on that information. And if you want to know a little bit more, go ahead and throw a comment down below if you're interested in that. But let's go ahead and jump back over to another side of the actual process of troubleshooting why you could be crashing in your performance issues. Another really big one at the end of the day is Windows updates, right? So you do want to always check for updates. Now, again, it's every year it seems like they change how this goes. We want to make sure we're up to date with Windows. This helps a ton with your drivers and how things are going to function. Now, moving into another area is once you have updated and you've realized, you know what, I'm not at the minimum specs, I'm not at the recommended specs, I don't think it's no longer my computer. I think it's actually more involved inside of Fusion being the problem. Well, Fusion itself has a built-in debugger for you guys to run at any time. So if you actually go up to your question mark and you go down to support and diagnostics, you can go down and you can actually run quite a few different things here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by running a graphics diagnostics. Again, if your machine is stuttering, it seems like you guys are going to see this in real time. It's pretty smooth movement. But if it was choppy, right, like it was just like boom to boom, this is where we would run a graphics diagnostics. Again, you could check for your latest drivers here. Obviously, as you can see, all of your information is displayed in real time. Again, we recommend a dedicated graphics card. You don't need to be spending a ton of money out there on a graphics card. A very simple, older generation, even 3 generations old now, works just as fine as the latest and greatest. So the next thing we tend to have people run when we talk to them at JIT Cam is there's actually the ability to set up the service utility menu on your end, right? Now, this is the reason why I like making this video is because I'm going to send this video to a lot of you, but you have the ability to, again, is if you're having network diagnostic problems, what that is happening is your Fusion is disconnecting and reconnecting a bunch. Maybe your tool libraries and your machine libraries from the cloud are loading very terrible. Well, we can run a network test. And as you guys can see, this will go through and this will check anywhere and everywhere. So I see the comment all the time, is the Fusion network down? Is the servers down? What is going on? Again, we can run a network test right here inside of Fusion. Again, troubleshooting, narrowing down, is it the network? Is it Fusion itself? Where the problem actually lies? Another great thing you could do here, and I'm not actually going to do this, but one, you can uninstall your Fusion. You can also set up and do a repair Fusion. Now, repair Fusion works really, really well in some cases where your software is a one-off problem, right? And by one-off problem, you got to remember you're dealing with a couple million lines of code in any software, but the one-off problems are basically when my customers bring me something or you guys put in a ticket, wink, wink, using the link down below, and you tell me, hey, this thing is crashing every time I'm doing something here. I try to replicate that problem on my end. I replicate that problem with your parts. I use your post. I try to narrow down, is it both of us or is it just you, right? If it ends up being just you, the Repair Fusion is going to be one of your best friends right now because you can run this. It is going to verify your files. It's going to possibly re-download and reinstall the latest update. So from that, as you guys can see, is we could do your network testing, check your actual graphics driver, and we can repair your Fusion install. Now, if we still are having problems outside of that, or we've had problems since day one when you installed the software, we tend to pivot our attention more over to your preferences, right? So looking at your preferences, there's a few things that you can actually do inside of your Fusion preferences, one of which is you can actually auto force a specific graphics driver. Again, if you're having graphics problem, you're on an older graphics card, we would recommend moving back to like DirectX 9. If you're on a professional level graphics card, it's much more beneficial for a lot of people to go to OpenGL. Again, depending on your graphics card, if you guys want us to help you troubleshoot that and get it set well on your end, feel free to send us your information and we'll take a look at it. But again, the DirectX 9 in most cases will fix a lot of problems if you're on an older card, or forcing DirectX 11 will work quite as well. So from there, we can pivot a few more things while we're sitting inside of here. Now, this is one I think a lot of people overlook, is when you're inside of Fusion and you're doing a lot of things inside of Fusion, is you're stacking your offline cache. So every time you open and save a file, there's a local saved version, and then there's a backed up version that goes to the cloud, right? And the reason for that is so you can quickly access commonly accessed files on your desktop without the need to download and like pull it into the software and do all the witchcraft in the background. But the big thing about this is we can change the numbers of days that it actually sits there on our computer. Again, this helps a ton. I've had several customers lately. The problem resided in a lot of mesh and scan data being uploaded, but because they were holding 15 days and it ended up being, I think, close to 150 gigabytes of meshes, this in itself was their problem, is they were almost storing too much things local, and Fusion was trying to basically compensate and math all of that stuff in one shot. So a few other things from that, we could actually pivot. Now, if you're having problems where it seems like files are opening slow, Fusion's crashing when you're opening a file, you could always go back inside of the actual diagnostics area and you can clear your cache data. So now, in my opinion, I set, in this case, you can see it's still 15 because I've never changed it. I usually set mine to 3 days. And then again, when you're having those problems, we can go ahead and clear our cache data, right? So you can clear this out as much or as little as you need. In the case of that customer working with heavy STL files, we cleared out their cache, and then it was like a completely different install inside of Fusion. Again, they had to open some files from the cloud, so they had to wait a brief period longer. But at the end of the day, it still resulted in the same thing, is we were able to smooth out the path between the cloud and the desktop running Fusion. So I see you guys out there, you're pretty quiet today. So let's go ahead and shift gears up, right? So here is probably the one that I see the most of, and you will suffer a ton on these next two categories. We're gonna look at the CAM side first, and then we're going to switch gears and we're going to look at the design side, right? So as you can see here on this lovely file that I have, there is a lot going on, and I'm going to turn my toolpaths off when we talk about the in-process stock, right? So as you can see, Bogdan Stewart, I see you guys out there. Thanks for chiming in on chat. But as you go through this process and you start to look at your files, especially, I can't make this stuff up. Again, guys, I'm at that high end of the recommend computer. I'm also on a $1,600 desktop computer, right? So that is my budget, $1,600 desktop gaming computer, runs flawless. But as you can see, is we are doing a lot of calculation for in-process stock. Now, for a lot of you, I think, when we start to talk about performance issues, you've probably been in the scenario where I'm going to force this, and you guys are going to probably have a panic attack like I would. But if I go in and I say regenerate all, it's basically going to lock up my machine here for a few moments. So those of you out there, you could see down here on the right, I'm not getting the gray standstill screen. I'm not getting the crash screen. It's actually, I am using the machining extensions hole recognition. So what it's doing right now is it is recognizing all of the holes to go out and identify to drill, but then we're going to trigger our in-process stock. Again, the in-process stock in itself is going to take quite a bit to calculate. And if I pull up my task manager for all of you, as you're going to see, and I always love this comment about, hey, what is actually going on in the background, or why is Fusion, I have a million cores to work off of, why isn't it working proper? Again, as you guys can see, my memory really isn't the problem. We're pinged at 16. My CPU is pinned all the way to full potential, right? Because it's trying to recalculate and regenerate and do all the math. Now, as you're seeing it starting to fall off here, and we're starting to absorb a little bit more RAM, but the idea is still the same. Regardless of the number of cores you have, Fusion is still a very single lane processing, right? So as you can see, I do have 20 cores here. It's not a huge difference. It's, again, more of a later, greater computer. But what's happening over here on the right, as you guys are seeing, is it's calculating the toolpath. And now we're waiting on our in-process stocks to populate, right? So we got our first in-process stock. Now our next in-process stock is trying to calculate. This is what is slowing us down quite a bit, is waiting on those in-process stocks, right? So again, as we go down, you can see any one of these toolpaths, the stock itself generation is the problem. The good news is there's a fix for some of this, right? So as you can see, again, I just want to pull this up. It went ahead and now did our rest machining on our next toolpath. And then it's now moving on to our scallop toolpath, which again, we're waiting on that stock, right? There it comes through. And from this, we can actually turn off in-process stock. So if you all have the ability to know what you're doing without really needing that stock being generated, we could turn it off, right? And if you didn't know, under utilities, we have our stock here, so we can automatic in-process stock generation, and we can turn that off, and we can actually clear out the cache of this as well. So again, what's happening in Fusion's world, for a lot of you to understand, is we are generating a mesh in the background, and that mesh itself is what is taking all the computing power away from my particular machine. Now, there is videos that I've made on tolerancing and smoothing, and all of that changes how fast your toolpath calculates. But I've seen a lot of people always ask, like, what is still generating? Why isn't this generating? It's taking forever. Again, if we pull up that task manager real quick, you can see I'm still calculating quite a bit of stuff. Again, this is where we talk about multi-core processors, and the performance advantage is I can still do things in Fusion while this is calculating on a couple of the cores, right? We're not using all cores right now. I have a lot of cores to pull from. That's the advantage of having a multi-core processor, right? But we can't calculate each we can't calculate the STL all at the same time. We have to calculate one, then manipulate the other, so forth and so on. And as you guys are seeing, if you could take a guess here, you scroll up, every time you kind of see one of these drilling tool paths, the stock gets verified, we see a peak in performance that aligns perfectly with that mesh STL in the background. Now, I did just regenerate all of this before I started this video, but the thing still is it is taking forever, and a part of that really does come down to the idea of, one, having automatic in-process stock turned on. So again, we can turn that off, but also we could clear the in-process stock cache, right? So again, with that cleared out, again, I don't personally think that I would need the in-process stock in certain situations. Now, on a mold like this, you may very well, but as you can see, if we go back and we just look at the stats, again, in this case, we can't look at the stats of everything in one shot, but let's go ahead and grab these first 4 toolpaths, right? So if we look at the log file, I'm a liar. You can't look at the log file of everything at once. So let's look at the log file on, I actually like the second toolpath. So here's our log. And as you can see, it took almost a minute to calculate. But if we went back and we recalculated everything again, let's go ahead and regenerate our toolpaths. And we're going to give that a few seconds, and we're going to see how long that takes. Yes, I know we don't have our actual drilling procedures turned on either, but the idea is still the same, is you're going to notice a very huge jump in performance without having in-process stock on. Anybody have any questions before we jump over to the design side? I see we have Elijah made it. Great to have you. You have an orbital computer. It's amazing expensive, though. That is great to hear. I have made the mistake a long time ago where we actually bought a Threadripper back in the day and actually got worse performance out of Fusion 360. And you only make that mistake a couple of times, right? So again, this is taking a little bit longer. Now, that in-process stock does actually make a difference here, because what is going to happen is it needs that stock model for calculation of the toolpath. And we're going to look at the log. As you can see, we really didn't pick up any other time, but a lot of my other toolpaths actually took off and calculated faster. Again, if we were to go in and simulate this, let's go ahead and simulate, in this case, with the machine. So I see Stuart out there on whole chamfer. Stuart, sorry to say it, but that is a question that we actually would look at on Friday more than a Workflow Wednesday video. We tend to reserve our information for the Wednesday videos based on the actual subject that we have here, but you're more than happy. You can go ahead and send us a ticket down below and we'll take a look after this. So again, as you can see, getting into simulation, we don't need that in-process stock model because I'm now going to make a verification of my stock here at Sim. So again, by turning it off, not allowing it to calculate, it's going to pick up a ton of performance on your machine, especially you guys out there doing things like laser, plasma, nesting. You don't need an in-process stock, right? Let's go ahead and pivot now over to the design side. So on the design side, I gotta say the number one thing, actually I would say there's two things. The two things that I see as a huge problem with performance, one is you're working with meshes. That's the game you're going to always face. However, core processing power, that is where your money is spent. If you're bringing in on a 3D scan on a $200 garage sale computer, it's going to struggle, right? Now, the other thing is I've seen people when they design stuff, they spend a ton of time almost designing without the intentions of paying attention to their timeline. What does that mean? Well, one thing is every time you're going to build an assembly, we would want components because components hold all the information to making that individual part. In this case, it's also called a component. So if I do a component, and we're going to keep this internal in this file, and I'm just going to say part A, right? What I see tend to happen is people will go in, they will create a sketch. And the first couple of problems they have, let's say we're going to make a jig plate, right? 24 by 36. And now I want a hole pattern on this jig plate. So I need to put a hole down here at the bottom, set my dimensions here real quick for you guys. And then this is a newer mistake. And if you've made this mistake, let me know in the chat. But what do? They take a sketch and they pattern a sketch. Whoop. Habits are kicking in because I would never pattern a sketch. But they go in and they do a rectangular pattern of a sketch. And as you add more and more information to this sketch and we add more and more items, of course, it's not going to slow down the craziest amount on my end. We need to go by spacing, 1 inch spacing. Let's go ahead and go 20 up. But a lot of times I see people start to have an issue with performance. We'll bump that up a little bit. Get a little better spacing on that grid. Go 1.5 by negative 1.5. But when you're actually going in this case, we're building a sketch. We're adding a lot of detail at a sketch level. Is your performance will start to get robbed based on the patterning of a sketch. Where this is also a pain, depending on how you're trying to model something, is if you went in and you wanted to extrude to create this plate right now, as you can see, I can extrude up to create, and again, don't judge me on my designs, guys. But if I wanted to now chamfer these, there's a lot of ways to add those chamfers, but it is going to be a total pain because I have to more or less select each and every one. Or if I select the entire face, what's going to happen is we're going to get a different chamfer outside. The better way to approach your designs, especially in a patterned environment, is not to pattern the sketch. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and use the old undo key, get me back to square one. Now, if this was my part, I'm going to go ahead and extrude this. Let's go down this time, make it a little nicer, because we're going to actually put a blind hole in this. And for those of you, again, new to Fusion, the moment you use a sketch, it tends to turn off. Now, you can turn that feature off in your preferences, but this is the hole I'm trying to make, right? And with that hole, I would like to, instead of a chamfer, we're going to put a fillet at the top because why not make the actual machinist angry? Now, when I pattern stuff, I like to pattern stuff at the solid level. Again, based on my timeline at the bottom, when I do a rectangular pattern, I can pattern features. Fusion will handle the situation of patterning features a lot better than it will ever have with patterning. In this case, again, things that are sketched, right? So again, we have spacing. We're going to go ahead and do roughly 20 by 20 or whatever it comes out to. But as you can see, I can still have that same speed and that same snappy response without limiting my actual performance of my machine. So again, I went ahead and typed in 5 in the wrong area. Let's go 1.5 here. And as you can see, we have that pattern built out utilizing a solid feature or a solid tool for patterning those features. Now, where we get into more issues here is, as you guys are seeing here, is the next thing I tend to see is if somebody wanted to add more detail to the same plane, they start to create new sketches. There's a time and place for this, right? But in this case, every time I go in and I add a sketch, is I am lowering the performance on the design side because we're dealing with lines and arcs and things of that calculation. So when you're working in the design side to help prevent your performance and your crashing, we do need to be very self-conscious when it comes in and we start to set things up. And I've seen this. I think some of you guys have made this problem before, where as you guys are seeing me right now, I'm kind of forcing things to happen, but I'm adding each individual little thing that I want on my part one at a time. It's going to cause a timeline issue, whereas you can see I could merge this all down. So based on that information, if I wanted a different fillet than this end, I could go back to my fillet call out. I can hit the plus sign. Again, making it easier on Fusion to do those calculations. Now, the order at which I do stuff as well, chamfer came after the fillet. That's why that chamfer now wraps around. Now, as you guys can see, there is a lot to take in here, and there's a lot of you that are probably still going to have problems. You guys have full range on going ahead, shooting me an email using the support email down below, and I'll try to guide you in the best way to get you set up. But I also want to go ahead and point out that if you are new to Fusion, or you are one of our expert customers out there, we are hosting a actual event this coming up next month, a month from now, is in May 5th, 6th, and 7th. We are going to be just north of Houston at the Haas Factory Outlet, sponsored by Champions, and we are going to be doing a 3-day Fusion training that you're more than welcome to come and join. The link is down below in the bio as well to go ahead and sign up and get into that. As you guys know, we always love your support. The likes, the subscribes, the sharing of this content goes quite far. So I'm also going to point out that we did update. I haven't updated this slide yet, but we did introduce the Buy Me a Beer and the Buy Me a Steak program. So now you can buy me a steak and a beer for all of you that think I only drink beer in the quantity of a 30 rack or a keg. But again, guys, we appreciate everything you do. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, leave comments down below, and we're going to get to those as quick as we can. With that, have a great rest of your day.